All right, for Buckeyes Now on Sports Illustrated, I'm Brendan Gulick, and looking forward to previewing what is a pretty big matchup on Saturday afternoon down at Value City Arena against the Indiana Hoosiers, the fourth-ranked Buckeyes, and Indiana in their only regular season matchup of the season. And we thought it was most appropriate as we get ready for that big game to talk with a guy who certainly knows a thing or two about Indiana hoops, Tom Brew, who's our publisher on the Fan Nation Sports Illustrated Network for Hoosiers Now. Does a great job covering IU basketball, and certainly a proud program with a ton of tradition, and a year, Tom, that at times has maybe left you scratching your head a little bit because the Hoosiers have been so close to having a really good record, but have fallen a couple of close games, and lately maybe playing some better basketball. So I think it should be a little fun to talk some basketball here this afternoon.
Absolutely. It's been sort of an interesting season with them. It's 10-8 on the year, 5-6 in the league, but a lot of those 8 losses, were games that really came down to a possession or two, and really only gotten beaten badly twice to Texas in the Maui Invitational in beautiful Asheville, North Carolina, and then at home to Purdue. They really weren't in that game either, but the other 6. Really were all, 1 or 2 possession games right at the end that could have swung either way. And it's I think in this league it's so competitive and it's so tough every night that I think every team could say that. But Indiana certainly could have won at least 2 or 3 of those with just a rebound here or a stop there. I mean, they've lost 2 games in overtime where they gave up an offensive rebound and the team scored to win. And it's just the simple thing of just literally getting a rebound would have made the difference, between a win and a loss in a couple of those. And of course, they lead the nation in 5 overtime games already this year. So they've been busy playing overtime and busy with every game coming right down to the wire.
Well, and those 2 most recent games that have come right down to the wire, things have worked out pretty nicely with a really tough game. You mentioned overtime, a double overtime win against Northwestern. And I think back to Ohio State's game against Northwestern, very early in their Big Ten schedule. And it is really difficult for me to believe that Northwestern has now dropped 10 games in a row since nipping the Buckeyes by 1 in that game back in December, right around Christmas time. Again, another team in the conference that, frankly, is pretty competitive. They just haven't been able to find themselves on the winning end, with any regularity lately, but still a good team. And Indiana goes and beats them after beating Iowa for the second time in a couple of games. So I realize the record might not be good, but maybe my first question for you is what's the misleading idea maybe this year around Indiana as a team that's not in the top half of the Big Ten, but could really make some noise maybe come tournament time?
Yeah, I think Brennan, the argument, I guess, that I get into the most with Indiana fans is that, this team is so talented, they should be better. And I always say, they're really not that talented. To me, Trace Jackson Davis is a tremendous player, and he's probably going to be a first-team All-Big Ten player. He's going to be on All-American teams somewhere, second or third or down the line. He's a very good player, but we were talking the other night, that if we had 14 guys doing a fantasy basketball league with only Big Ten players, Trace Jackson Davis is the only one that gets picked in round 1 for sure, and probably the only one who gets picked in round 2 or maybe even round 3. It's there's a big drop off in elite talent after him, and in the guards like Armand Franklin as a sophomore has really come on nicely this year. Everybody sort of expected that it would take a year or 2 for him to get comfortable in Bloomington, and he's done exactly that. He's very clearly their second best player. Certainly becomes a primary option, hit the game-winning shot to beat Iowa last weekend. He's become a good player, but like the veteran guards, Al Durham and Rob Finney have both been incredibly inconsistent this year. They've had Finney got off to such a bad start that he actually lost a starting job and only got back in the starting lineup because of injuries, and didn't make a single shot all night against Northwestern. Missed every field goal attempt, missed every free throw attempt. 0 for 5 from the field, 0 for 3 from the line. And then he knocks down 2 free throws, to give them the lead, at the end of a double overtime to win. And it's like hard to figure. So I think that, like, to me, like, that's a big misconception that that they've got enough talent. Like, I thought at the beginning of the year that if every single thing went right, that they could be in the top 5 in the Big Ten, but everything had to go right, and it hasn't been. The biggest thing, obviously, is they don't have Joey Brunk, who's been out with a back injury all year and then needed back surgery in December. And without him, they just don't have much size. Trace and Race Thompson at 6'9" and 6'7" start and play most of the minutes. And, Jerome Hunter, who's really more of a wing guy, has been forced to play inside. And even Jordan Geronimo, who's a freshman, he's been forced to, guard Luka Garza in games. And he's a 6'6" freshman. And so there's just not – they don't have all the pieces. But when they play really well, they can be dangerous because they really play well defensively every night, no matter what. And the perfect example of that is with Iowa. I mean, Iowa's 2 lowest scoring games all year were both against Indiana, and scored in the 60s both times, and they've been averaging close to 90 otherwise. And so Indiana's a very inconsistent team, difficult to figure out. When they shoot it well, they're certainly very tough to beat, but most nights they haven't shot it well. And but you never know what to expect.
Well, Trace and Ray certainly get a lot of run, but I really like what Armaan Franklin's done this year. I mean, he's taken a massive step forward from where he was a year ago, and just another really, really solid weapon for Indiana. I want to play something for you. This is an excerpt from Chris Holtmann's press conference probably 2 hours ago at this point, or 3 hours ago. He spoke to the media around 12:45 this afternoon. I had a chance to ask him a couple questions specific to his thoughts around Indiana. So I'm going to play those for you and grab your reaction off of that. Chris, what are the hallmarks in your mind of an Archie Miller coach team, and what makes this a unique challenge?
They're always tough. They're always tough. They're always physical, and I think they always play really, really hard on both ends, but particularly defensively. In our short time playing against Indiana, that's really been that has really been the hallmark of the teams, and most of all of our games have went down to the wire. And we've been fortunate on a couple wins for sure, but those are kind of the things that I think of. This year's team is good offensively and they're good defensively, and again they're a veteran group. And you can tell that with the group that's played together a lot, and then a star in Trace.
Then as you've kind of watched them progress throughout the course of the year, as you guys advance scout, I know they've won a couple of really tight games, at the end of games, their last couple trips out. Where do you see them getting better that you guys really need to focus on?
I think their guard play has really helped them, and Race Thompson kind of coming into his own has really helped them. I think those are the kind of things they got a deep bench. They got a variety of guys that they can go to and that they do play. Hunter made a big shot for him. Hunter made a really big shot for him a couple days ago. So they just got a variety of guys, and they're a talented group. But I think Race and their guard play, Franklin kind of coming into his own. Finney's played really well. It's been, I think, that combination that's allowed him to have some really important wins here of late.
Tom, your thoughts there on what Coach Holtmann had to say?
Well, I agree with him that Jerome Hunter certainly had a big shot the other night. He had to sit out a couple of games for some violations of team rules, and came back into the Northwestern game and hit a huge 3-pointer late with the shot clock running down, sort of a step back 3-pointer, and but it was huge. And Indiana's bench is interesting because when Hunter was out, for instance, they only had 9 scholarship players available, and the 4 bench guys were all the freshmen, and they have been sort of slow to get into the mix with this team. Trey Galloway was the first one to really get quality minutes. He took over for in the starting lineup for Finney early, and then when Al Durham was hurt for a game, he started. And he's provided a lot, especially on the defensive end, but he's very hesitant and resistant to still shoot a much. So he hasn't really scored much, but he got much time. And then the other 3 guys are all freshmen too, and they have had their moments. and they've had more moments lately, but it's been a slow go. They had 19 points on Sunday in the win over Iowa, and all 4 of them, contributed big shots when Iowa was all over them early. They were up 12 on them in the first half. And Archie put those 4 freshmen in together, first with Race Thompson and then with Trace Jackson Davis, and they got right back in the game. Anthony Leal hit a couple 3-pointers. Christian Lander hit a 3-pointer right near the end. Trey Galloway had a couple of big, huge rebounds that started runouts. And then Jordan Geronimo, he's a dunking machine. He's got under some runouts, and all of a sudden they were up 2 at halftime. And then same thing in the second half. They fell behind again, and when he subbed the freshmen, they came in and played, and they needed to, because at one point, with 5 minutes to go in the second half of that Iowa game, the 3 starting guards, Franklin, Finney, and Durham, were a combined 1 for 22 from the field. And, but Archie trusted the freshmen and they made shots. But what I really gave Archie a lot of credit for in that game against Iowa was that he also stuck with his veterans. So, within the stretch, he put all 3 of them right back in there. And he did it. And when I asked him about that, he did it more for the defensive part of that, because they knew he needed stops. But Finney hadn't made a shot all day, hit a 3-pointer to tie the game at 61, and then Durham hits a shot, and then Armand Franklin hits the shot, in the final seconds to win the game. So that shows some confidence in themselves, to have such a horrible day and then make big shots down the stretch. But it showed a lot of confidence that Archie had in them too, that he knew he needed the stops, but he also knew they were a confident enough bunch that if they got shots and the right opportunity, they'd make them. And that certainly swung the deal there, because they stopped Iowa 3 possessions in a row and, made some big shots when they needed to.
It's an Ohio State team that's also playing, I think, with a high level of confidence. And frankly, that's so much the forefront of team minds this time of year, right? You want to be playing feeling like every time you shoot the ball, it's going in, and you can start running back on defense because, you haven't even seen the ball go through the hoop yet. You just know it came out of your hands so purely. You get teams that play with that level of confidence and that level of pizzazz on offense. It can get really fun this time of year, and certainly you guys have seen some good basketball over the years. I'm trying to think about some matchups here. And EJ Liddell is going to get a lot of the attention on scouting reports this year because he's taken such a good leap forward this year. He's Ohio State's leading scorer when he's on the floor, especially this stretch where the Buckeyes have now won 8 of 9 and have gone from being unranked to a top 5 team in the country. There's no doubt Liddell has been a massive part of that. But Kyle Young in particular, the last 2 games, scored 16 and then a career high 18 points last time out, of which 13 came in the second half. And you just kind of get the feeling looking at this Ohio State team, which had some experience in terms of, we're not talking about a group of freshmen all playing, but not necessarily a ton of experience together. This particular Ohio State team hasn't been around as a cohesive group together for several years. But Kyle Young, one of the elder statesmen on the team, he's played more than 100 career games now, and you really get the sense that he is starting to play at a high level. When you look at it from Indiana's perspective, knowing that Liddell is going to take a lot of the attention in the front court, what matchups do you think Indiana could try to present to Kyle Young to maybe neutralize what he's been able to do lately?
Yeah, it's an interesting matchup, Brendan, and primarily because Indiana and Ohio State both, they really, they don't have the they don't play with the Kofi Coburns or the Luka
Sure.
Garza type big men. They both wind up playing smaller anyway. So I think, like, from a size perspective and a speed and quickness perspective, I think those matchups up front are going to really be fun to watch, because I think they're basically coin flips. I think they certainly Jackson Davis and Thompson can guard those guys and vice versa. But Kyle Young's always been a bit of a thorn in the side of Indiana. He said he's had some moments against them, and he's from seeing him all the time, he's just that energy guy who just always seems to be in the right place, right time, and make big plays when they need him. And so I'm looking forward to that, because we've been through this stretch where Indiana's had to play a lot of bigger, taller teams, and they've kind of been tough on Jackson Davis, like right at the rim lately. And so I'm curious to see if he has a bit of a breakout game offensively. He's been a little quiet the last 2 or 3 games. And he's missed a lot of shots right at the rim. He just hasn't converted a lot of them. And but I think this is what I like about these matchups. It seems to me like these are very evenly matched, one-on-one battles that we'll see on both sides of the floor. And then of course, Ohio State can rotate guys in and out as well. And those, that's what I like so much about this Ohio State team now that I've finally watched them more, is that all of those guys can really do a lot of different things. They've just about all the time the 5 they have on the floor are all capable of hitting shots, all capable of guarding for sure, and certainly all capable of making nice passes and keeping the floor spread and running good stuff. I've been impressed with Ohio State lately, and I do my weekly Big Ten power rankings, and I've been hearing it from Ohio State fans all year because I have sort of underappreciated them most of the way. But a lot of it was because early, I watched every minute of that Northwestern game and thought, man, it's kind of this Ohio State team doesn't show me much. Sure. And then, of course, as part of my job, I also take care of a lot of our Purdue stuff, and I watched Purdue beat Ohio State twice, and so I mean, in my memory banks, I have the loss to Northwestern and I have the 2 losses to Purdue, and then a lot of highlights of victories. But I've had a chance, in this last stretch, to watch them 4 or 5 times, and I'm really impressed as to how they play as a unit. And absolutely, it's no surprise with the Chris Holtman team. I mean, they really guard people right now, and they make it hard, to score. And be curious to see, what Indiana does, especially early offensively, because they have struggled out of the gate a lot lately. I mean, we were 12 minutes and change into that game with Northwestern the other night. Indiana had 7 points. They were 3 for 18 from the field to start, 0 for 6 from the line to start. I mean, nothing was going right. 7 minutes to go in the first half, and they had 7 points. It was just a joke. But then they scored 78 and won. But so I think that's, to me, that's the key to this game is Indiana being able to find some offense and to find some points early in this game.
One of the things I most like about Big Ten basketball is you really feel like you're throwing the records out when the 2 teams get on the floor. If you've been a casual Ohio State fan this year and you're getting ready for Saturday's game, you hear Indiana basketball and you automatically think that it's going to be a really good team. And perhaps you see the record and think, oh, maybe Indiana's having a down year. This shouldn't be a problem for Ohio State. And I just don't know if that's an appropriate way to feel. You referenced Purdue and Northwestern having beaten the Buckeyes. Those were 3 of Ohio State's 4 losses. And frankly, all of them were close. The first Purdue game was without E.J. Liddell when he was dealing with mono. And the only game that Ohio State really had kind of a clunker this year was Minnesota, the first game of January, and they've obviously played well since then. But these 2 teams have played pretty competitive games over the years. And frankly, since Ohio State has been hosting games at Value City Arena, they've kind of had Indiana's number. They're 10-4 in those 14 games. And the Buckeyes have played historically well in Columbus. As you've kind of gone back in your memory bank, Tom, and you think back to some other games where Ohio State and Indiana have met, or any of them stand out to you that you really want to touch on?
Well, what's kind of interesting in recent history, is that that Holtman's got that 6-1 edge on Archie Miller because they both came in to Ohio State and Indiana at the same time, and certainly there's always been that crosstalk as it could have easily, depending on the timing of those openings, it could have easily, gone the other way. Archie could have been the coach at Ohio State, and Chris Holtman could have been the coach at Indiana. And
right.
there are many people in my Indiana fan base that would love to trade with you if we could.
No offense, Archie, but no thanks.
Exactly. And I'm not saying that either. I'm saying those are the fans of Indiana. I will remain neutral. I will be Switzerland on Archie, and it's like I've tried to tell people that it's. All these people always want to talk about firing their coaches in January and February. That doesn't happen in January and February, and it also never happens in the middle of a pandemic. So shut your yap on that, but we'll worry about that later. But it's like, it's been, to me, the most memorable, obviously, was the one win, last year, because, I think Ohio State was ranked 11 in the country when they came to Assembly Hall, and it was one of Indiana's best played games last year. They did a great job, defensively, of wreaking havoc. And Devontae Green, who was a very streaky shooter during his Indiana career, made a bunch of big shots in that game. And of course, that was back in the day when there were fans in the stands. And
ancient history.
Exactly. And it was they were just totally into that game from the get-go. And in Assembly Hall, when Indiana's playing well, it can get very loud, and they were totally engrossed and into that game. And Indiana played really well that day and beat them. And that's, like I said, it's Archie's only win against Ohio State, and they've been hard to come by. And a lot of it really touches on what we just talked about. I mean, Indiana's always really struggled to score against Chris's teams. I mean, they've really just, it hasn't been a great matchup for them to ever get comfortable. And so we'll see. But, obviously, going all the way back and, in this rivalry, it's, I remember in my college days back in the 70s and 80s, there was some really good Ohio State teams and Indiana teams played some great game. And, my senior year in 1980 was the Mike Woodson, Butch Carter, Indiana teams who were at Ohio State. And I remember my senior year, they were down double figures. It was a 1980 game, and Indiana stormed back and rallied, to win. And those were back in typewriter days. And I remember, having to ball up, what was the start of my story about and starting from scratch. And there's been a lot of good Indiana Ohio State history, and certainly. When Terry Hutchins from the Indianapolis Star and I used to work together, we wrote an Indiana basketball book 4 years ago called Missing Banners that deals with 5 Indiana basketball seasons where they could have won and came up short. And when one of those sections is on the 92 and 93 Indiana teams, and those, to me, that was the absolute heyday of Big Ten basketball, because Indiana was obviously very good. Michigan had the Fab Five. They were great. And Ohio State, those teams were just loaded, and every game was a battle. And, and then in 93, Indiana went 17-1 in the Big Ten, and their only loss was to Ohio State that year. And they were just a great team. And then, of course, Alan Henderson got hurt, just right at the end of the season, and they lost to Kansas in the tournament, and it was one that sort of got away. But I remember all those games, from the 90s, really well too, and always thoroughly enjoyed watching those Ohio State teams then. And of course, when Thad was there, he was winning a lot of games with Indiana kids.
Sure.
And of course their run, in the tournament, with Greg Oden and Michael Conley, 2 Indianapolis kids who, that's always a little bit hard for us Indiana guys who, when you see Indiana kids, succeeding at other places, it was tough. But those Ohio State teams were tough. And I tell you what, that night of that championship game, I was rooting hard for Ohio State. I really wanted to see that team win a national title that year. And obviously came up a little bit short on the last night, but it's been fun. And of course, obviously going way back, I mean, I've done my fair share of history and, Bob Knight's playing days at Ohio State way back when, and even had to reference it just a few weeks ago. There was when Ohio State played Iowa. It was the first time they had played as top 10 teams since 1961. And I had to go back and find the box score, to see that, Bob Knight played, but missed his only shot and had 1 rebound in that game. But
see, that's why we have you on, Tom, because you're the encyclopedia. You've got all the stuff front of mind.
There's It's also called just being old, man. When you're 62 years old, you remember that. And of course, I joke with Don Fisher, the radio voice of Indiana, who's been there for 47 years. Every time we bring up something, I'll ask him, well, what was it? What was that? What happened in that 1940 national championship? That you called? So I've been around a while. Like I said, I covered Indiana basketball as a student, in the late 70s. So the 78, 79, 80 teams, I covered.
Certainly know those intimately.
Exactly. So I know those well. But since then, obviously, being around the game for 40-something years, the Indiana-Ohio State rivalry, like to me, for outside of, the Indiana-Purdue rivalry because it's in-state, to me, the most important games through the years have always been, with me at least, the Indiana-Ohio State rivalry, I think, to me, is the second best Big Ten rivalry for Hoosiers fans.
I'm sure it is. It's a ton of fun, and I know Buckeye fans enjoy it as well. I wanted to get your thoughts on maybe a more big picture topic in present day, since you mentioned the pandemic. Michigan hasn't played basketball in what feels like a month. They're supposed to play. Fingers crossed that things are gonna be okay and that they can get back onto the floor. The Buckeyes are supposed to play Michigan in about a week and a half now. We played this season as fans and certainly as teams and schools. We all went into this together knowing the resumes are going to be very debatable because we're not going to be able to compare apples to apples in a lot of cases. You're going to have schools that play almost their whole schedule. You're going to have teams that play barely the minimum number of games required to make the NCAA tournament. I don't think Michigan's anywhere close to that threshold. They've already played 14 games, and I'm pretty sure the number was 13 just to get in the NCAA tournament. So they're going to play the tournament. But the thought of deciding a Big Ten champion based solely on win percentage, when maybe you potentially could end up having a second or third place team that wins more games than your first place team does, but it comes down to win percentage. I guess realize Indiana's probably not going to win a Big Ten title in the regular season, but how does that sit with you?
Well, to be honest, Brendan, I'm fine with it. I mean, I wrote a column on this 2 weeks ago when there was a lot of discussion about how are we going to make up all these games, and the Big Ten was really dragging their feet on trying to find ways to change all that. I think they've rescheduled a total of 6 games. That's it. And now we're running out of time. And Indiana has missed 2 games. They've missed games at Michigan State when the Spartans had their issues, and then they missed a game here with Michigan in Ann Arbor as part of this recent stretch. And I don't see how they can make those up. I mean, there's just in the current schedules, the way they are, it would really entail somebody playing on back-to-back nights. And I don't think they want to do that, for one. And for two, like for me, if this is all supposed to be about taking care of the kids, like, do we really need to put kids, on an airplane, and play somewhere on a Friday night and then fly somewhere and play somewhere again on a Saturday? Is it really that important? And that was my argument to my entire column. Like, if they don't play 20 games, so what? It's like, in the perfect example of that, of course, and what is the whole Ohio State football argument, that I was on your side and not with the side of all my Indiana fans, who kept saying, well, Ohio State doesn't deserve to play in the Big Ten football championship game. Indiana should go because they played one more game. It's like, no, that's stupid. They played, the 2 best teams in the Big Ten East were Ohio State and Indiana. They played on the field and Ohio State won. Let them go play the championship game. It's okay. And if they, and obviously the entire argument became moot when Indiana couldn't play some of their games at the end either. And quite frankly, if Indiana would have had to play in the Big Ten championship game anyway, I doubt that they would have been able to. They had 26 positive tests, going into it, and some of them may have been back, but they would have played in that game without any practice. So and the same thing here. It's like, to me, if Illinois finishes the Big Ten season, 16-4, and Michigan finishes the Big Ten season 12-3, if they're Big Ten co-champions in a pandemic year, so what? It's okay. It doesn't matter. Now there are ways around that, of course. Like I have Michigan and Illinois were supposed to play last night, and unfortunately, the Wolverines had to postpone that one too and add that to that was they were supposed to miss 4 originally, and now they wound up missing 5. If it comes down to Michigan and Illinois being the last 2 standing and have a chance to sort of win the championship, then juggle the last week of the schedule around. Let those 2 teams play on Sunday and just sort of call it, the Big Ten regular season championship game, if that's the case. But sure. the Michigan and Michigan State people, they don't want to. They got 2 games basically to still play, and and there's been talk. Why don't we just play those back to back the same week? And Indiana's saying, well, we want to go. We want to play those guys too. And so we're just running out of days. So to me, it doesn't matter one bit if teams play with somebody plays 20 and somebody plays 16 or 17 or 18. Doesn't matter one bit. And if it comes down to that, so be it. I mean, last year we had 3 teams, call themselves Big Ten champs. They all and they all tied. So what? It's they didn't have enough trophies to go around for everybody to smile with the pictures, but that was okay. The Wisconsin got their pictures and Maryland got their pictures, and I don't know how many. Michigan State, I think, was the 3rd, or it could have been 2 more. I mean, I don't even know. It didn't matter. A week later we were supposed to play a Big Ten tournament anyway. So it's obviously, for all that we've had to deal with this pandemic since March, if there has to be an explanation as to who wins the Big Ten regular season title, so be it.
And for now, we've gotten the season in, I don't want to say uninterrupted. It's certainly been interrupted for a few schools, but for the most part, the season has moved along. The Big Ten tournament has relocated from Chicago to Indianapolis. Obviously the NCAA, right? Yeah, I'm sure you're loving life with that. The NCAA, creates this de facto bubble now for the NCAA tournament. So I am curious on what your feel for the vibe right now in a basketball crazy state, anyways. How people are reacting to the fact that the entire NCAA tournament's going to be played either in and or around Indianapolis, and a few games on both Purdue and Indiana's campuses. Yeah,
well, the first thing the basketball crazy fans in Indiana will say is, please let us in so we can watch. That's
right.
That's they want all that because to be honest, if the games are played in glorified studios in the state of Indiana, but no fans can go watch them, it really doesn't matter whether those are being played at 30 Rock in New York City or being played, one of 2 courts in Lucas Oil Stadium. It's because it's not like, one of the things I've always loved about the Big Ten tournament being in Indianapolis is, downtown Indy is very easy to navigate, and there's just everything's right there within walking distance of everything. And during the Big Ten tournaments, there are host bars for each school, and everybody's just out and about having fun. Well, this Big Ten tournament, there's not going to be any fans there. I mean, they're going to play this thing inside Lucas Oil Stadium, with nobody there, and 2 courts set up that they're using for the NCAA tournament too. It's not going to be the same. I mean, it's, I'm glad that it's there, obviously, because I can just drive, from home to cover the 4 games every day and then go back and sleep in my own bed, which is always a good thing. But, so the fact that it's all there, I think it's good for the teams, though, is that they can go play the Big Ten tournament and they don't have to leave. Once they know for sure they're, certainly I would think right now that we're looking at 8 Big Ten teams being in, more than likely, maybe 9 now. Minnesota got a big win to help them last night. So I think their resume, if it comes to that, I think we're looking at 9. And then, if a Penn State or a Maryland or whatever got hot the rest of the way, maybe they've worked their way in too. But for all those teams that come to Indy to play in the Big Ten tournament, they Sunday night, they know who they play next, and they stay in their little hotel bubbles in Indy and get ready to play without travel. Because there are a lot of teams who will tell you when you play a conference championship game on a Sunday, then you find out Sunday night where you are, and then you have to be, in Pocatello, Idaho, on Wednesday, for a Thursday first round game. There's almost no preparation time for NCAA tournament stuff, and they've got a great plan already set up here in Indiana. They've got practice facilities all cleaned and set and ready to go when the time comes. And there's 6 sites where they'll play the NCAA tournament at. Mackey Arena at Purdue and Assembly Hall in Bloomington, but then the other 4 are in Indy. 2 courts at Lucas Oil Stadium, Bankers Life, and then the Pepsi Coliseum, which is an old building, but still will be perfect for this, especially with no fans.
Aren't they using Hinkle Fieldhouse as well?
Hinkle's the 6th. Yeah, Hinkle's the 6th. And
okay.
So they're all everything's going to be right there, and so it'll work out fine. And of course, I was joking with Matt Painter the other night that wouldn't it be ironic if Purdue's using Indiana's home locker room in Bloomington for their first and second round NCAA tournament games. And the Purdue fans quickly reminded me that Purdue owns Assembly Hall right now anyway, after winning 5 straight there. And so it's going to be interesting, to see how all that plays out. And certainly it's great that it's all right there and close. But the same thing. It's to me, it's no different from playing all these things in glorified TV studios. Is really all they are. There's not going to be any fans there.
Well, big game on Saturday afternoon. We've been going here for a little bit, so I think we'll wrap things up. Obviously, a noon tip-off with two schools that, frankly, both really need to win this game for 2 different reasons. Indiana needs it because I think they're still looking for that signature win they can hang their hats on with some good wins lately, but maybe not one against the caliber of Ohio State this year. And the Buckeyes, they've got a good thing going. They've got to try to keep this thing, moving in the right direction. And right now it seems like, as of today, a 1 seed in the tournament could be theirs to lose. So we'll have to wait and see how it all shakes out, but a good one on Saturday. Tom, thanks for joining us. Appreciate your insight, and hopefully it's a fun game.
You're welcome, Brandon. Looking forward to it, and thank you. But I will tell you that those 2 wins over Iowa, a number 4 Iowa and a number 8 Iowa, are indeed
certainly good ones.
Yeah.
Certainly good ones. I don't want to take it away from you, but the Hawkeyes, Hawkeyes have been stumbling lately.
Yes,
so perhaps I misspoke. Those are signature wins, but this would be, I would argue, this would be Indiana's biggest win of the year if they could pull that off.
I would agree. Yep,
all right.
Looking forward to another Saturday in Columbus. It's been since November, so I always enjoy my trips to Columbus, and looking forward to this one as well.
Easy drive. HoosiersNow.com, BuckeyesNow.com for all your latest on Ohio State and Indiana athletics, and certainly hope you'll consider subscribing to our YouTube channel, Buckeyes Now on Sports Illustrated. That's Tom Brew from Hoosiers Now. I'm Brendan Gulick. See you again real soon.